Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so for some reasons I couldn't post the video yesterday. I'm very sorry for that. Due to some personal reasons I couldn't make it. And coming to today, we are at day 11 of our complete DevOps course. So for the people who haven't watched our previous videos, we are doing a full DevOps course that would be typically 45 days, and we have already done day 0 to day 10 where we covered different aspects of DevOps. We covered the fundamentals, Linux shell scripting, and basics of Git. So today we are talking about the Git commands that are useful for DevOps engineers. Okay, so without wasting any time, I created a folder called Git Demo for this demonstration, and now we are currently in the folder. It's blank, does not have any files or folders. Okay, so in general, this video can be useful for anybody, not just the DevOps engineers, because we are going to look at the commands that are used by software engineers in, day out. Okay, so day to day life in their organization or in their projects. So firstly, let's say you are given a task. We'll take the same example that we were using in the previous videos. Let's say your task is to use write a calculator functionality, and what you have done is you wrote a calculator.sh. Okay, we'll try to do most of the things through command line, and I'll also show you how to do the same things using the UI. We'll take GitHub as an example so that you understand how things are done in the UI, how things are done in the CLI. So parallelly, you can take a look at that. Firstly, let's say you are writing a calculator functionality. Okay, so don't bother about the syntax because my intention is to just show you the functionality. Okay, so let's say I'm writing a addition function. Okay, so I'll save this file, and what I have to do is once I am done with this function, okay, I have to share this repository in a Git repository. It can be self-hosted Git, it can be GitHub, or it can be any other place. Okay, so I have to push this to a Git repository. So one way of doing it is either okay, let me show you this one. So you must already know that either you can do it through the UI, right? So if you want to do it through the UI, it's pretty simple. You can simply click on the new button, and you will be asked to create a repository. It's pretty straightforward, creating a repository from the UI, because there are no commands involved. You just provide the name of your repository, provide a description, whatever you want to do. You want to keep your repository public or private, and then click on the create repository, right? So your repository is created, but let's try to do the same thing manually. I mean, through the CLI. Okay, so to do that through the CLI, what I'll do is the command which we use is git init. Okay, what git init does is it will initialize a local repository for you. Okay, so if you see here, what git said is initialized git empty repository in your local. Now, if somebody is thinking, how do I have git installed on my local? It's pretty simple. I've shown in my previous videos as well. You can go to a website called Git SCM. So if you see here, just type Git SCM download. Okay, so you have this repository where you can download Git for any distribution that you want. Currently, we are using 2.39. Okay, so I already installed Git here, and I have my Git running, and I initialized the Git repository using git init. So what happens when a Git repository is initialized? Or an interview question here is how to create or initialize a Git repository. So the command, I mean, the answer for that would be simply use the git init command. And what happens when you do git init command is you can simply do ls-ltra or ls-a. So you will see a folder created here. Previously, there was only one function called calculator.sh, but now there is also a folder called dot-git. So dot-git is the key component of Git. Okay, what happens with dot-git is Git will refer dot-git for tracking, for logging, for everything. Like you want to provide credentials to a secret Git repository, or you want to ensure that your developers are not pushing any sensitive information to their Git. Okay, so sometimes what happens is you create these repositories in GitHub, and some of these scripts, let's say your calculator.sh requires a password to be executed. Okay, so mistakenly, unwantedly, unintentionally, developers might push the password to Git. Okay, so to avoid such cases, what you can do is you can basically in .git there is a file called hooks. Okay, so you can make use of this hooks and write a pre-commit hook, which will prevent getting your developers push the password into Git. Okay, but the main thing that I wanted to explain is what is .git. Okay, so somebody asks you how to create a repository and what happens once you create a repository. So you typically say that to create a Git repository or to initialize a Git repository, you use a command called git init. And once you use git init, a .git folder is created in the directory, which we see here. So a .git folder is created, and this .git repository is responsible for tracking and ensuring there are no secrets, or you can do a lot of things with this .git. So this should be your answer. Perfect. So I showed you how to initialize a Git repository. Now, once you initialize a Git repository, nothing will happen, right? Because even if you do Git status, so Git status is a command to see what is happening in this repository. So if you use .git, Git will not tell you anything, because you know if you see this message here, it says untracked files. That means Git has no information about the calculator.sh. So to track this file, okay, or to okay, what is the reason why we use Git? So if you watch my previous videos, one of the good thing about Git is it provides you versioning. It tells you what are the changes that are made. Let's say I'm doing my active development. Okay, so during my active development, uh, unexpectedly I deleted a file, or unexpectedly I removed a bunch of lines from a code. Okay, so what we usually do, we press Ctrl Z. But what happens is you forgot it, and you changed a lot of things. So Git keeps a track of everything. So if the changes that you are making, you add it to .git or you add it to Git, so that you can ensure that there is a proper tracking mechanism. I'll show you how. Okay, for example, this is calculator.sh. Today we are not tracking this file using Git, but let me track this file using Git. I mean, we can add the file to Git. So git add calculator.sh. Okay, now if you click on Git status, so Git will tell you that okay, uh, changes to be committed, there is a new file called calculator.sh. I mean, Git understood that okay, you are asking me to track a file called calculator.sh. Let's see what happens if a Git tracks a file. So I'll show you git vim calculator.sh, and I'll write a line here. So for example, x is equals to a plus b. Okay, I know that I haven't declared any variables, or let's say x is equals to 1 plus 2. This is a basic calculator addition that you are doing. Okay, so if you use the git command to just see what are the changes that are made, so use the git diff, and Git will tell you okay, so somebody has added, either you or somebody has made a change to this file saying x is equals to 1 plus 2. So you can simply remove this change or you can keep this change. Let's say you are making a lot of changes and you forgot the changes that you have done, so you can simply come here and say git diff. Okay, and if you want to add these changes, that means you say that okay, I agree these changes. You can simply say git add dot or git add calculator.sh. So dot will basically add a lot of lot of files at once. But if you just use the file name, you can add it. Or if you, let's say you don't want, you can simply say git checkout calculator.sh and your files will be removed. Or okay, I think I just want to go very slow, so that's why let's only talk about git add for now. So what is the purpose of git add? So if you want to add any changes or if you want to add any files to Git, so that Git will track these changes, because the main functionality of Git is to track version control, or audit your files. So for that reason, the very first command you do whenever you make any changes to a file is git add. Okay, so what happens if you don't do git add? So your .git repository here, right? So it will not understand that there is a file called calculator.sh, and even if somebody deletes this file or even if somebody makes any changes to this file, .git will not bother about it. But the whole purpose of .git is whenever you are doing active development, sometimes you write thousands of lines, 10,000s of lines. So if you have .git ready and if your .git is tracking the files, so at a time, even if 100 files are changed and you don't want all of these changes, simply you can do git stash or git checkout and all the files will be all the changes will be removed. Or you can simply say git add and all the files, all the changes will be added. Perfect. So now the next command is, once you okay, you added all the changes. Okay, now let's see what is git status. So git status tells you that okay, you added a new file and you have also modified the file, but your changes are not committed. So that's what Git is telling you here. See, changes to be committed. So what does changes to be committed means? So once you do git add, okay, the next thing that you have to do is git commit, followed by the message and what is the message that you want to provide. Now, why do you have to do it? Like, one of the primary functionalities of git is version controlling, or you have a proper mechanism of tracking things. So for example, if I say this as my first commit, okay, what happens here is whenever you click on git log, git will show you list of commits. So whether it is a change that is done by you, whether it is changed by done, let's say you're working in a team of 100 members, okay, sometimes you don't know who made which change. So for now, this is just a calculator.sh, and all the changes that I've made is all the changes that are made to this file are only done by Abhishek. But in some cases, what happens is, today a developer called XYZ added hundreds of files, and your code stopped working. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to see who made those changes, and you want to go back to day before yesterday's code because that was working fine. So if you don't have a commit mechanism, so in this case, if you see here, Git tells you that, okay, so I am Veeramalla is the author, and the commit message is my first commit. So in your cases, it can be added addition functionality, added subtraction functionality. And if the tester comes to your manager and says that, okay, so once you add the subtraction functionality, the code is not working, so the DevOps engineers or the developers can always go back and say, okay, let's remove the subtraction functionality and let's only keep the addition functionality because that was working fine. So for that reasons, you need a tracking mechanism, or you need mechanism to see a list of history, what are the file changes that are done, and you can always traverse to the changes. We will see how to do that, but for now, what we have learned is we have to always do git add for tracking the files, and we have to do git commit so that you have a commit mechanism and see who made the changes and always go back to a specific change. So that's why we do git add and git commit. Fine. Perfect. So I did git add and I did git commit. Now finally, if we want to push these changes, the command that we use is git push. Okay, so what is git push? Git push is nothing but now you have your entire code base in your local, right? But what is your end goal? Your end goal is to put this into a GitHub, because if your teammates have to use it, or if somebody has to use it, end of the day you have to put in a repository where everybody can access, right? Personally it is in your laptop, but we want a distributed system so that everybody can access. For that reasons, what you can do is you can use a command called git push, and using git push you can actually push your entire code to your git repository. It can be self-hosted git, it can be GitHub, it can be Bitbucket, or it can be anything. So now fundamental question that most of the interviewers would ask you is, what is the Git workflow that you use in your organization? So the answer for this is these commands: git add, ampersand ampersand, git commit minus m, the commit message that you want to provide, and ampersand ampersand git push, right? So these are the commands which you use day in, day out. What are the commands? Git add, git commit, and git push. Now, let me, I already showed you git add and git commit, but what happens if I do git push? So if you do git push, nothing will happen. That means your changes are not pushed to a GitHub repository, because the point here, or the problem here, is that this code is currently only in your local and it is not targeting any remote repository. What is a remote repository? So in my case, in my organization, we are using GitHub. So GitHub repository will be my remote repository. So most of the times what DevOps engineers or developers do is they create repositories through the UI. Okay, they click on the new button, they create a repository, and then they use a mechanism called cloning. For example, so this is the Argo CD project. Let's say I am contributing to the Argo CD project. So as a developer, what I usually do is I come here, there is an option called clone. Okay, so you can use this URL, one of these URL, and you can come to your local and simply say git clone followed by the URL. What happens is your repository gets downloaded. Okay, and for example, I'll show you here. So this repository got downloaded in my local. So this option is called clone. And whenever you make any changes and do git add, git commit, and git push, your changes are referenced to this repository so that your changes get pushed to your Argo CD repository. But in our case, what we have done is we have initialized and created repository locally itself using the CLI. So there is no remote reference. So whenever you are using a git push command, the code is not going to any remote location, right? So the reason here why my git push is not working is because the repository is created to the CLI and there is no remote reference to this repository because this is a repository that I've created to the CLI. Whereas in this case, I went to the Argo CD repository, which is already existing in the GitHub. Let's say tomorrow you are joining an organization. So in that case, what you do is you go to your organization. If you are working on a project that is already there, so you use the git clone option to clone your repository. And similarly, I'll use the same workflow, right? I'll make any change. I'll do git add. I'll say git commit. Okay. And finally, I'll say git push and my changes will be pushed because there is a remote reference. For example, if you see here, git remote minus v, okay, sorry, I need to go to Argo CD folder because I just cloned it. And if I do git remote minus v, where I'm asking what is my remote reference. So it is telling you that, okay, so this particular thing is your remote reference. So that's why whenever I'm using git push, my changes will be pushed. Whereas if we go back to a folder and this is the folder, the git demo that we created. And if we use a command called git remote minus v, you will notice that there is no remote itself. Okay, that's the reason why my git push is not working. The reason why I'm stressing this a lot is most of the times I get these questions in the comment section asking that, okay, I use the git push command, but nothing is happening. The reason again is because you did not configure a remote reference. So what you can do is you can either add a remote. So for that, the command would be git remote add. Okay, you can add your GitHub location so that what happens is your remote will be created. Like in this case, again, there is a remote. Okay, so if I do git remote minus v, there is a remote here. Okay, so that's the reason why whatever changes that I'm pushing are reflecting in this location. Whereas in this case, in the previous case, there is no remote. So what you need to do is you have to use a command called git remote add. Okay, followed by the location where you want to create this repository. So it can be GitHub or it can be Bitbucket or it can be Git EA or any Git repository that you're using in your organization. Once you add that location, your repository will be created in the remote as well. Okay, so in my case, I would add this location. For example, what I would do is I would say github.com/Veeramalla followed by whatever the name of the repository that I want to provide. Is that clear? Okay, so this is a way. So the command that we use is again git remote add followed by the repository name. So I'm not doing it now because I don't want to create any stale repository here on my GitHub. For now, I already have a lot of repositories. Okay, so this would be the command git remote add. You can try it by yourself, and if you have any questions while you are doing it, just post that in the comment section. There will not be any issues as I expect. Perfect. So this is a mechanism or this is a very simple Git workflow. When somebody asks you Git workflow, you have to answer the question in this way. Perfect. Now, as we already, we were already looking at this process called cloning. So I'll explain you the cloning in detail. Okay, so let's say you started working in an organization. So what usually happens is when you're working in an organization, you would typically use a command called git clone. Okay, why git clone is used? Or somebody asks you how to pull code from GitHub. Okay, so the answer is the same whether somebody is asking about cloning or whether somebody is asking how to pull the code from Git. The answer would be to use a command called git clone. Okay, so what is git clone? So git clone is a process using which you pull the code from GitHub or you pull the code from Bitbucket or any Git repository. So what you do is basically, so this is a Git repository that I'm showing you, GitHub repository. So you have an option called code, click on this and you have multiple ways to pull your code or download your code or clone your code. One is HTTPS mechanism, one is SSH mechanism, and the other is GitHub CLI. So for now, ignore about the GitHub CLI. One of the most used, two of the most used mechanisms are HTTPS and SSH. So if you're using HTTPS, you can simply click on the copy button and say git clone. I already showed you, and it will ask you password. Okay, so what is the password? Password is your GitHub password. uh, right, password is your GitHub password. So you can simply create an account with GitHub, and if your organization is placed in GitHub, or if your organization is placed in GitLab, just provide the password and your authentication is done, and you can download the code. And the other mechanism, and the important mechanism, is using the SSH. So how to download the code using SSH? So again, it's not any rocket science. Basically, if you're on Linux machine, or if you're on a Linux box, you already understood the concept. You must already know the concept of public and private key. So when you're using SSH, you basically authenticate using your public key, whereas you are using HTTPS, you authenticate using your password. That's the only difference. Okay, so how do you clone your code? When somebody asks you, you say that clone is nothing but download. You can either download your code from GitHub or Bitbucket using HTTPS or using the SSH option. So if you want to use HTTPS option, you can provide your password, whereas if you want to use the SSH option, what you need to do is you need to figure out your public key. So on your Linux box, most of the times you have a public key. If you don't have, you can simply use a command called ssh-keygen. Okay, minus t rsa is I mean, you can simply use ssh keygen as well, or you can use ssh keygen minus t rsa, and what happens is it will generate you a new public private key. Okay, so okay, I'll show you, there is no problem. So I can click on enter, and by default I have a public key here, a public private key. If you don't have, you can just click on enter, and it will create you a public private key. And after that, what you'll have is you will have a .ssh in your home directory. Okay, so if you look at the .ssh folder here, there are multiple files. So I have a public key, I have a private key, I have a known host key. Okay, so these are the files that are usually there. Okay, I opened it in a Vim mode. You can also use cd, there is no problem. So if you do cd to the .ssh folder on your local, so in my case it is users a Veeramalla. In your case it can be anything else as well. Okay, home Ubuntu or anything depending upon the Linux box that you are using. So I open .ssh. So here there is a key called as public key. Okay, so what you need to do is you can open this file. Okay, you can open this public key, and once you open the public key, what is happening here? Sorry. Yeah, open the public key and simply copy this public key and paste it in your GitHub. Okay, so how do you do that? Go to the settings option here. Yeah, go to the settings option here. Okay, and once you go to the settings option, there is a option here for providing your public key. Okay, so it's called, I actually increase the font. Yeah, so it is here. So SSH, you can simply add a new SSH key. Okay, once you add your new SSH key to your account, you can come here, add a SSH key. Okay, so you can just provide the name of your SSH key, and you can provide your SSH key here. So in my case, I'll copy the contents of id.rsa.pub. This is not the file, this is just the file name, but here you have to copy the actual public key. Okay, how do you copy that? Go to your .ssh folder, you will find a file called id_rsa.pub. Just open that file, copy the content, or use the cat command. You will get the content on the terminal. Just copy it and paste it here and add SSH key. So from next time, it will not even ask you for the password. Clear? So this is how you can authenticate with GitHub and clone the code. So for that, the command that we would use is git clone. Okay, so now let us come to a very important question. Most of the times you must have seen this question, that is, what is the difference between git clone versus git fork? Okay, so this is a very important question. Most times you get this question. Many people ask this question in interviews. So the difference between cloning and forking. Now you understood what is clone, right? I don't have to explain it again. You can simply go to any repository that is public on GitHub, and you can download their code. That process is called cloning. Whereas forking is nothing but, like I mentioned you, Git is a distributed version control system. What is Git? It is a distributed version control system. That means the Git code is present in one place, but you can distribute it. Like you can create multiple copies or multiple uh, replicas of this Git, and you can collaborate on that replica. So for example, This is Argo CD. What I can do today is I can click on a button called fork. If you see here, there are 3,400 forks. That means 3,400 people have created the copy of this repository to that particular date. If I'm doing fork today, I'll get a copy of this entire code today. Even if this code is getting updated, my fork will not be updated by default unless I do it explicitly. So, today if I want to copy this code from Argo Proj Argo CD and create a fork for myself, for example, I want to create a fork in DevOps by examples, or I want to create a fork in I am Viramalla. Today I can do it. This is my fork I already created. And if you go to my fork, what you can do is now instead of argoproj.argo cd, you can download this repository called I am Viramalla Argo CD. If you click on the code button, you will see a different URL altogether. Here the URL has changed to I am Viramalla. And you and me can collaborate on this repository. We can create our own version of this repository independent of Argo CD, right? So that's why fork is used to create a copy of a repository, whereas clone is used to download specific repository. That's the difference. Okay, so the fundamental advantage of Git is a distributed version control system that can be obtained using forking, the concept of fork. Perfect. So we covered two important questions, actually three. First is how to create a repository from the CLI. Then we covered another important question, that is difference between Git clone and Git fork. And another thing we covered is what was that? We also covered about what is the Git lifecycle, right? Because we were fundamentally looking at understanding the Git lifecycle for anybody, whether it can be DevOps engineers, developers, or anyone. So these are the three important questions that we covered till now. Now, one more thing. Okay, so you understood how to create repositories in your local, how to create a remote, how to push the files, and how to also download the files. Okay, and we also used HTTPS mechanism and SSH mechanism. Perfect. Now, most of the times what happens is we understood the concept of branch in the other class. So let's say I just have one branch here. If I go back to my repository, okay, so this was my repository, and if you see here, by default you only get one branch, that is a main branch. Whether you create from the UI or the CLI, you just have one branch called as the main branch. Now let's say I want to create another branch on this and I want to work on a different branch. Now, what is the purpose of it? I already explained in the previous class, but just to let you know, most of the times in our organization, what happens is, even if you look at this Argo CD repository, okay, most of the times what happens is people tend to work on different things. Like, for example, we are building the calculator functionality here. Okay, so you build the calculator application, you deliver this piece of code to the customer, but your product owner or your manager comes to you and tells you that, okay, let's build a application that is much more advanced to this, or let's add a new feature to this calculator application that is very huge. So instead of adding the changes to this existing main branch, because when we are talking about huge features, or when we are talking about let's take a real-time example here. Let's say you are working for Amazon, and what Amazon has decided is, okay, let us introduce something called as for example, like urban company, they want to get into a carpenter sections. Okay, in Amazon they want to add a functionality where you can also order for a just like you can order for any goods, you can also order for a carpenter. Let's say they want to introduce that feature. Now this is a huge feature, right? It takes months together to write this feature. So if you and you can't do it in one single day. So let's say this main branch, if you start pushing this simple changes, for example, today the other developers added a few piece of lines of code to the carpenter functionality that Amazon is going to add. The major problem would be that small piece of code can break your actual application that you are developing that you are giving to the customers. Okay, so you don't want to happen that, right? So for that reason, you create a branch and you say that, okay, everybody who's working on that Amazon new carpenter functionality, okay, do your work on this specific branch so that you don't disturb the existing functionality that we deliver to the customer. And once you are confident, get your changes to the main branch, you can merge those changes, we can combine them, and we can give this new application to the customer. Till then, whatever you are testing, test in that branch itself, the carpenter branch. Okay, so this is a very important thing that usually happens, right? Every organization tend to do the same thing. They always want to enhance their application. So that's why we use the branchings in Git. Now, let's say I create a branch here. Okay. So, okay, before that, let me do this thing. Let me add another functionality to this calculator called, just for understanding. Okay. Subtraction. Okay. So I added one more functionality and I do the same process. What happened here? Git add calculator.sh. Yeah. Okay. Let me remove the Argo CD actually, because it is actually disturbing the ones here. RM minus RF Argo CD. This was the repository that we just cloned, right? So let me delete this one. Perfect. Now I will do git diff to see what are the changes. I just have this one change here. Okay. Perfect. Now let me do git add. Okay. And let me say git commit minus m my second commit. Okay. Now if I do git log, I'll have two things, right? My first commit and my second commit. Now, what happened is here at this point of time, we delivered this entire calculator application to the customer, but your project manager said that no, let's build calculator one more functionality, and let's also give that to the customer. But as a developer, you said, okay, this will be a very big change. So let me create a new branch. So for create, and let's say other people or other developers will work on this branch. So how to create branches? So to create a branch, you can either use a command called git branch, okay, and create an empty branch or a new branch, or the other way you can do is using the git checkout minus b. So what git checkout minus b does is, today in the main branch, whatever code is there, right? So you can create a branch from that point, because that is essential, right? So today's calculator functionality should be taken and you have to enhance in a different branch, and once it is looking good, then you can get back the code to the main branch. So for that reasons, what we do is git checkout minus b. Let me call this as division. Okay, let's say there is somebody else who is going to work on the division branch. So now if you do git branch, you will see a new branch called as division. So this was the main branch and now you have a new branch called as division. Make sense? So now you are in the division branch. Let's say I am adding, see, you are already in the division branch. Let's say you want to add same calculator function is also here, and I will add a new feature called as division. Okay, I'm not writing the code intentionally just to save the time. So I added the division functionality, and I'll do the same things: git add calculator.sh, git commit minus m add division. Okay, and finally what I'll do is I'll do git log to see what is the logs. So my first commit, my second commit, and division. So here these two changes are coming from the main branch, because you created a division branch from the main branch, and finally this is your new change. What happens if you go back to the git checkout is the command that is used to switch between the branches. Okay, so if I want to go back to the main branch, I can use git checkout main. So now what happens is, if you do git log, you will not see the division, my division commit or division, because in main branch you haven't added it. The main purpose of branching is this. So using the branching concept, you can isolate, or you can separate the development activities. Okay, that's what we have done. So in the division branch, we added a new function, and in the main branch, you did not add that function. So let's say the division functionality is done. Okay, so now you want to get the code in the division branch into the main branch. So here comes one more important concept. So to merge the branches, right? That is the concept that you have to do almost every day, because developers are working on multiple branches and you want to get the changes from one branch to the another branch. So in such cases, you can actually do three things. One is you can do git merge. The other is you can do git rebase, or you can also do git cherry pick. Okay, so these are the three things that you can do, and we'll see each one of them. Okay, first of all, one of the easy things to do is git cherry pick. Okay, so what is cherry picking? Cherry picking by name itself says that you are picking the commits. Okay, so if you go to git division, you always don't have to go to git division. You can directly use the git log followed by the name of the branch. Okay, what was the name of the branch? We use the division as the name of the branch. So if you do git log division, from here itself you can see what are the changes in the division branch. So you don't have to do so git log division is equivalent to git. So both of these commands are same. Either you use git checkout division ampersand git log, or you can also use git log division. Both the commands are same. So because this is the easy way, we'll always use the easy way of doing things. So git log division. So this is the new commit, right? So as a developer or as a DevOps engineer, if you want to get changes from one branch to the other branch, one of the easy things to do is use git cherry pick. So here I'll do git cherry pick once again to show you. Git log does not have the division commit, right? So I'll use git cherry pick. I copied the commit from git log division or the division branch. And once I actually lost it. So let me do it one more time. Git log division. Let me copy it from here and let me do git cherry pick. Git cherry pick followed by the commit ID. So now it said that a new file is added or two new insertions are made, and this is the new commit that is added to the main branch. So if I do again git log, you will see that add division, the commit is added to my main branch. Okay. Even if I do git log main, I'll see the same thing, the 3 commits. And even if I do git log division, I'll see the same 3 commits. So this is how you merge the branches using git cherry pick. But wait, now if cherry pick is this easy, why should I use git merge and or git rebase? Okay, so this is a very interesting question, right? If cherry pick is this easy, why should I use these two mechanisms? The answer to this is cherry pick is easy when there are 1 or 2 commits. But like I mentioned you, if Amazon.com has to implement or define a new functionality called carpenter, or let's say it says house services. Okay, so if they want to implement a new functionality called house services, they will have, like, 50,000 or 60,000 commits. So it is not practically possible to always go to that new branch, copy each and every commit ID, and manually do cherry pick for 6,000 times, 7,000 times, or there might always be some merge conflicts as well. So for that reason, the easiest way of doing things is either use git merge or git rebase. Perfect. So why there are 2 commands again? So if there is an option to do git merge, and if there is an option to git rebase, why you need 2 things? So let us also see this practically, because many people read about this online, but they don't understand what is the difference between git rebase and git merge. So that's why today we want to see this practically. Okay, so let me again create a new branch. So how do we create new branch? Git checkout -b. Let's call this branch as merge example, because I'm going to demonstrate merge. Okay, and let me add a new change here. Okay, we'll use the same calculator.sh, and here what I'll do is I'll add a new functionality. Let's call it as multiplication. Okay, again we'll do the same thing. Git add calculator.sh, git commit -m demonstrate merge. Okay, and just clear the screen and just do git log. You will see that a new commit is added called demonstrate merge. Perfect. So again, I'll do one more thing called as let me go back to the main branch, and because I want to demonstrate both merge as well as rebase at once. So let me go back to the main branch. Okay, and in the main branch, let me again create something called as git checkout. What do we call this new one? Okay, let's call this new one as git checkout -b rebase example. Perfect. And let's again add a new change to this rebase as well. Okay, so if you notice here carefully, here there is no functionality called multiplication, because in the rebase you did not add multiplication functionality. Make sense? Multiplication functionality is only added in the merge one. so that you don't see that in the rebase functionality. So that's the advantage of branching concept. So if you are working on one branch, other people can work on it isolatedly, so that there are no conflicts. You don't have to worry about other changes at this point of time. So here I'll add a new functionality called percentage. Okay, and again let's do the same thing, git add, and then let's say git commit minus m percentage. Cool. Let's do git log and see what happens. So here my first commit, my second commit, git add division and git percentage. Okay, so if you don't want to see such a lengthy log all the time, you can simply use git log hyphen hyphen one line. Okay, in one line it will show you what are the commits. So here in one line the commits are my first commit, oh sorry, yeah, so in one line my first commit, my second commit, add division and percentage. Similarly, if you want to look for merge example, so in the merge example branch, if you do hyphen hyphen one line, what are the things? My first commit, my second commit, add division and demonstrate merge. Okay, here my first commit, my second commit, add division and percentage. Okay, so these are the different commits. Now let us get both of these changes into the main branch, and similarly let us understand what is the difference between rebase and merge, so that practically we can see what is the difference. So git checkout main. So definitely, meanwhile, when Amazon people are working on their house services branch, or they are working on the code on the house services branch, there will be some changes made to the main branch as well, because the other developers will not sit idle, right? So let me create some changes in the calculator.sh as well. So let's say, let me add one simple, this is a test change. Okay, so let's say I just added one simple change here. And as soon as I do the same thing, git add, git commit minus m test commit. Okay, now let us get both the changes into the main branch, the rebase change and the merge change. And at the same time, let's understand what is the difference between rebase and merge. Firstly, let's do git merge example. Okay, save. Let's see what happens. You know, uh, let us do this one more time. Okay, you may not conclude your merge head exists. Okay, please commit your changes before that. Okay, I understood what is the problem here. So git commit minus m add changes, for example. Okay, so let us again see if there is anything in the git status. No, so let me commit this one, git merge example. Perfect, it is up to date. Okay, so git log, let us see what happens in the git log. You see here it said my first commit, my second commit, add division, then there is something called as demonstrate merge, test commit, and add changes. Okay, now let us try to do the rebase. Okay, so git rebase, I think rebase example. Okay, so there are some conflicts that I am landing into, because I understood what is the reason. So the reason why we landed into conflicts is because we changed the same file and exactly we use the same reference as well, right? So if you see here, if you go to the calculator.sh, you will see a conflict here. So how to fix the conflict? Okay, it is good. Practically, we got this example as well. So that what you need to do whenever you get merge conflicts is, in this case, I got a merge conflict because multiple people in different branches are updating the same file. Now Git will ask you, what is the actual change that I have to pick? So how do you handle the merge conflicts is go to that file, sit with the developers. That is the only way you do it. Okay, so sit with the developers and ask you. In my case, the merge conflict was between percentage and multiplication, because in one branch somebody is doing percentage and in one branch somebody is doing multiplication. Okay, so to practically understand the difference, to practically show you, what I have done is I have cleared the merge conflicts and I said both percentage and multiplications are required. So what I have done is I have removed all the merge conflicts that were created. So in this case, I can take that liberty because I wrote this application. But in most of the cases, you have to sit with the developers and you have to talk with the developers that, these are the two teams that have changed the same piece of code. Now which code has to be taken into consideration? Perfect. So I did that. Now let me do git add again. After you fix the merge conflicts, you have to do git add and you have to commit again. fix, or you can simply say git rebase -fn continue as well. Okay, you don't have to worry about that. So here you can provide the commit message as well. So demonstrate merge. Perfect. Now if you do git log, okay, so see what has happened. Okay, so this is my first commit, this is my second commit, this is add division, and here comes the important thing. So demonstrate merge is actually coming from the merge branch, whereas percentage is actually coming from the rebase branch. Okay, and in between we did something called as test commit, right? So what we have done is, to explain you practically, first of all we created a, okay, so this was the workflow. First of all we had a main branch, and from the main branch we created a branch called merge branch. Okay, merge example. And similarly from the main branch itself, okay, let me show you in this way, so that you understand in a better way, right? So firstly we had a main branch. Okay, from the main branch we created something called as merge example. Okay, at the same point, and developers started working on it. They made a commit called let's say merge example. Okay, at the same point, you also created a branch called as rebase example. Okay, I'll show you using diagram as well, don't worry. So you also created rebase example, and he added a functionality called percentage. Okay, and between, there are developers in the main branch as well, right? So what the developers in the main branch have done is they added a functionality here as well. So okay, let me do this. So oh, so what they have done is, even here they added a new functionality, and in the new functionality they added something called as test commit. So now what happened is, there is a test commit, there is merge example, and there is percentage. When we try to get all of these things in together into one single branch, what happened is, you got all of them together, but the merge changes are updated at the topmost, whereas the rebase changes are updated here. Okay, so the reason for that is, how do you want to deal with the things? Do you want to deal with a linear fashion, or do you want to, like, it is the only difference between merge as well as rebase is how do you want to organize your changes? Okay, so for example, let me show you using a diagrammatic way. So git merge versus rebase. Okay, so if you take a look at this one here, it will clearly represent you using a diagrammatic way. For example, okay, this is our main branch, and from the main branch we have created a branch called as merge example. Okay, what happens is, when you are using the merge example, both merge and rebase will do the same thing. They will merge both the branches. But if you are using merge, okay, what happens is, all your changes will come and get created at the top. Okay, what happens if all your changes gets created at the top? That means your changes are updated after your existing change. If you see here again, so this was my point where I have created the merge branch, and when I merged it, the merge branch changes are here. Okay, it is updated at the top, and whereas the rebase change is updated here, that is at the bottom. Okay, I mean before the actual creation of the branch. So whenever a developer wants to, like, there are developers in the main branch as well, right? So whenever they want to go and track the changes back, what happens is merge will disturb their changes. It will not disturb actually. So there is not a linear commit way, or you cannot track the changes in a linear way. So this developer wants to see what were the changes he has done previously and after, but because you have done git merge, the changes are not in a linear order. That means he will not understand, okay, after this change did I do this change, or after this change did I do this change. So there is no a linear fashion to understand things, whereas if you're doing git rebase, you can understand that in a linear way. So here, if you look at rebase, what happens is, this is point where you created the main branch. From the main branch you created a rebase branch, so all your changes will get updated before your main branch. So if you see here, this is the previous branch, and all the changes that test developers in the main branch are doing, they have access to it in a linear way. So for example, there are 10 commits. All the rebase branch changes will get updated before the 10 commits of the master. Here in my case I just have one commit, right? So if I have 10 commits, so before this percentage change, I mean after this percentage change, all my 10 commits will be available here. So that is the difference between rebase and merge. So if you want to if you are working in a large project, and if you want to always track the things what are happening, so which commit came after which commit, and whenever you are doing a branch rebase, your branch should get updated before your branch. So or your changes should get, your commit history should be linear way. In such cases, always use rebase. Whereas if you are not bothered about it, then you can use merge. Okay, so this is difference between git rebase and git merge. So both git rebase and git merge will do the same things. Whereas if you are using rebase, you get a linear commit history. Whereas with merge, you don't get that. So that's the same thing that I try to demonstrate here as well. So using git log, what happened is the rebase change. The other branch which I am getting got updated. All the commits got updated before this. Whereas if I am using merge, all the changes got updated before my after my main branch. Okay, you can try the same example by your end as well, so that you will understand practically. Okay, if you have any confusion here, try the same things. It's not that difficult, or it's not rocket science, right? So you can try it by yourself, and you can practically understand the difference between git rebase and git merge. So this is another interview question. So similarly, we talked about 4 important interview questions of Git, and similarly, we also covered a lot of Git commands, and these are the most of the Git commands that you will use in a day-to-day basis. More than this, I think occasionally you get to use it, and whenever you get to use it, you can probably Google and search for the things. But these are the things that you use day in, day out. And if you want to look at other important Git interview questions and all, I have made a previous video. I think long back I made a Git interview questions video. So I'll also try to put that link in the description. You can go through that video and watch for 18 to 20 Git interview questions that are very popular. Now, if you have any questions apart from this, I think I have covered most of the topics, but if you still have any questions, you can post your questions in the comment section. I'll definitely reply to each and every question. Even if you have some things that I did not cover, also try to put that in the comment section. Now, if you like this video, click on the like button. Any feedback, post that in the comment section. And finally, don't forget to subscribe our channel if you haven't done, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye.